the session. Today's session, we are going to discuss about the classification of information systems. Now, until now we were trying to understand various concepts around system, information system, then we were trying to understand components of information system, and in today's session, let's go forward to understand how these information systems are classified. Information systems are basically classified as operation support system and management support system. So, if you look at the diagram, you have operation support system which comprises of activities which are occurring in day-to-day business scenario. While on management support systems, you see lot of decision making systems are present. Now, these activities are supporting the managerial decision making. Now, under operations support systems, we have transaction processing systems, process control systems, enterprise collaboration systems. Now, these three major information systems are useful for day-to-day activities of business, and that is the reason it is called as operations support system. Now, management support systems are mostly useful for managers at various levels. Now, let us try to understand operation support systems in depth one by one. Now, we have transaction processing systems. Now, as the word says, transactions, a transaction is an event or an activity which occurs with a function initiation. Now, we have two types of transactions, like the real-time systems transaction, which gives immediate processes activation, while we have batch processing where the processing occurs after some time accumulating the data for a specific period. Now, the basic difference between the batch processing and the real-time processing is, in batch processing, transaction data is accumulated and then processed, while in real-time processing, it's dynamic, or what we call online processing, and it gets processed immediately. Now, to understand it better, whenever there are set of transactions which needs to be collected and then processed, we can use batch processing, and even today in some of the systems this type of processing is preferred, where the transactions are calculated at the end of the day or needs to be accumulated and then processed. They use batch processing. But in majority of the business transactions needs to occur instantaneously and give the feedback again. In such a scenario, it needs to be very fast and real time. So, there they are going to use the real time transaction systems. Now, how does this transaction processing cycle occur? If you look at the diagram, the first step of the transaction processing is data entry. The moment the data is entered, the transaction is initiated, and what happens there is the data is captured and stored in the database. Now, maybe batch wise or real time, but it needs to be stored, and then activity is performed. So, a document is generated, or what we call report is generated for the evidence that what is the transaction is occurring or completed. And then in between you also have inquiry processing, which is validating the data. Let us take a small example to understand this. Now, let us say somebody wants to log in on an email. So, the first step is they are going to enter the user ID. Now, once the user ID is correct, they have to then enter the password. Now, once the user ID and password is validated, it just allows the user to enter the login. Now, every set of action here is what we call an event occurrence. A transaction is a series of actions or events, and every event validation leads to data capturing or further flow of data. Now in the process there, probably somebody who is at the bank might continue with the activity of withdrawal or deposit of the money, and a series of actions are performed until the last chain of activity is stopped. The transaction processing systems enable such day-to-day activities in business scenarios. Transaction processing systems are required in routine setup in day-to-day activities. Now, if we look at the transaction processing systems, they are most widely useful where day-to-day orders are generated, which generate accounting data, inventory data, customer data, financial data, invoicing data, or any further identification of segments or classifications done to segregate the data. Now at that first point itself, the data is segregated to ensure proper classification and criteria verifications. Now it's not only taking the data, it also throws the feedback. Now having understood transaction processing system, we get to know that it is required in business setups where day-to-day activities are performed and every transaction needs to be recorded. Now this usually is there at the bottom layer of operations management. Now moving forward, we have process control systems. The process control systems are the systems which are used to control a particular set of activities, mostly in the industrial scenario or in a business environment. Now these process control systems could also be cybernetic systems or automated systems which monitor or control the activity. Now if you look at the diagram, we look at one of the process control systems which is enabling a certain set of activities until it meets the criteria and then stops at some point once the criteria is met. Now to take an example for this, we can assume like you are there at the petrol bunk getting your vehicle petrol tank filled. So you tell that petrol bunk assistant or the boy like, fill me petrol for 500 rupees. What he does is he goes and keys in that 500 rupees amount on that device panel and he comes back and puts the filler in the petrol tank and it just doesn't even bother to stop that. Now what happens is once the criteria of that much amount of petrol is filled in the tank, the filler automatically stops. Now how was this possible? The reason is there is a criteria validation based on 500 rupees what amount of petrol needs to be filled, and once the criteria is met, it is stopping the activity. Now not only in this scenario, in many industrial scenarios, process control systems are very useful. Where human intervention is slightly difficult, process control systems are useful. Let us take an interiors design section which is one of the component for a car manufacturing or maybe a metal furnishing where the metal needs to be melted and shaped at higher degree of temperature. In all these situations, humans won't be able to tolerate that temperature. Now, in such situations, there are automated machines with pre-designed instructions or programs. When the operations is occurring, they match the criteria, validate and immediately perform that criteria based operations. You might have seen an automated process like this, and it is process control system which is behind that operations. Majority of the industrial scenarios today are dependent on process control systems. Next we have enterprise collaboration system. As the word collaboration reflects, enterprise collaboration system is dependent on three principles: collaborate, communicate and coordinate. Now if you look at this diagram, it's very clear with a set of activities an enterprise collaboration system can enable. Now these activities are enabled with the help of electronic communication tools where one can use enterprise collaboration systems for communication over email, voicemail, faxing, web publishing, internet phone, paging, etc. An organization would have designed a communication channel or a protocol wherein these applications are designed, and it might be a particular channel of communication which is a strict adherence in the communication process. Not only that, it might also be enabling the teams to talk to each other through any of these technologies. Now, in some situations, there are also separate applications which are designed for smaller groups and authentication is reserved, which only means that, let us say, subgroup A and subgroup B needs to stay separate. So, you can have a smaller networks of subgroup A and subgroup B. So, they are collaborating within the teams, but they might never be allowed to collaborate between the teams. So, enterprise collaboration system enables collaboration based on criteria. You need to enroll the number of users or authentications which needs to be present on that communication network. Now, we also have electronic conferencing tools which consists of voice conferencing, video conferencing, discussion forums, chat systems, electronic meeting systems. Now, these systems are mostly useful whenever there needs to be a conversational type of communication. It is mostly interactive, while the earlier type of communication restricts one-way communication and the written communication is not possible spontaneously. In these channels of electronic conference tools, interactive sessions are possible. So, there is instant reply and interaction between the parties present in the collaborative systems. It might be a situation where the parties of collaboration are on different zones or geographies, but still with the help of these devices, they would be able to communicate, talk, interact over conference type of sessions. And these days, it is not only restricted for the business purpose. A simple setup thing like a WhatsApp group call with a family members or a friends group or a smaller business group is more facilitating than any of the higher video conferencing tools. So, technology today is enabling lot of such activities which were happening earlier on a computer is possible to be done on a simple device like a smartphone. You just have to have that particular application and go ahead using that. And users are also quite comfortable in knowing or setting privacy or authentications by allowing the number of users or restricting the users' functionalities on that collaborative groups. So, in enterprise collaboration system, we also have collaborative work management tools. Now, under collaborative work management tools, we see calendaring and scheduling. Now, when a team of people want to decide on a common agenda or a time, these activities are going to be very useful, like scheduling and calendaring and reflecting it on the buddy group or the team group, task and project management, workflow systems, document sharing and knowledge management. Any of these collaborative systems' main purpose is to ensure communication constantly flows through a collaborative network of systems. Now, isn't that wonderful opportunity for staying connected and taking set of things forward, simultaneously discussing with the help of enterprise collaborative system? So, having discussed operation support systems which are useful for day-to-day activities, we now look into management support systems. Now, as the word represents management support systems, now these information systems are mostly useful for managers at different levels. We have management information system, which is pre-specified reporting for managers. decision support system, which is also called as an interactive decision system or support system, executive information system, which is information tailored for executives. Apart from this, we might also have strategic information systems, knowledge management systems, or different type of other systems. But to be specific, managers at various levels use any of these information systems. Let us say like managers at operational level use day-to-day routine tasks. There might be a transaction processing system as a part of their day-to-day activity. MIS mainly focuses on managerial concepts or managerial decision making. Managers in their day-to-day activity are dependent on different type of data and information. A management information system facilitates processing of this information and disseminating it to the managers at various levels for actions, decisions or proceedings. A decision support system is an interactive system which enables the managers to look into the data and make decisions. Decisions are made in uncertainties. When the information is rightly available, it facilitates proper decision making. We also have group decision support system. Now, to enable a decision support system, you need the data to be organized, processed and stored and disseminated to the right set of people. Like we usually say, right data at right time to the right person. Now, a decision support system is a set of information systems which comprises of huge data which reflects the information to facilitate day-to-day decisions or strategic decisions or even for the tactical decisions. Now, managers at mid-level and top level mostly use the decision support system. Now, moving forward, we have executive information system. In executive information system, information is tailored as per the management levels. Now, an executive who is at the operational level requires a different type of data when compared to the executive who is at the top management or mid management layers requires a different type of data access. The information which is processed is customized and distributed based on the layers of the management hierarchy and hence it is called as executive information system. Now, executive information systems could be there at the higher end like top level management, and in some of the smaller business networks it might be there at the mid or lower levels also. Now, apart from all these information systems what we discussed under management support systems, there are also different information systems which are part of an organization like strategic information system, knowledge management system, expert systems, or a simple lower level application for front end executives like office automation system. All these different types of information systems are useful for business activities. Now, from the diagram we understand which type of information system is useful at which layer, and you can see something like a decision support system is there in top level as well as middle level. You can also see transaction processing system is there at the operational level. Executive information system and office automation systems are present at multiple layers. So, a combination of these information systems facilitate the overall decision making and day-to-day activity in the business setup. With all this, we understand an information system is so important and an organization needs to make an effort to create a right set of data processing units to facilitate an information system which in turn is helpful for decision making. Apart from all these information systems, we might also see a combination or cross informational systems which might be integrating these information systems under operation support system and management support system. The reason is they are still all an integral part of an organization. Functional information systems are again classified based on the functional activities occurring in the business organization. We will be discussing more about business and functional information systems in the next session. Now with this, we conclude this discussion. Before we close, let's take a look at quick interesting facts. Take a look at the slides to understand which are the different types of information systems most widely used in different business scenarios, and a few references which are used in this particular session. And before we close the session, let's take a quick look at the highlights of the session. In today's session, we discussed about classification of information systems, which is like operation support system and management support system. Under that, we discussed different types of information systems which are useful for an organization in their day-to-day business proceedings. Thank you.